John Egbert. In a way, Ralsei's design is cursed. For the player, Ralsei is cursed in that his name, appearance, and behavior cannot be fully separated from Asriel of Undertales. Especially considering when people only had Chapter 1 to play with, you could probably say that Ralsei was cursed to not be seen as real as Asriel. The Curse of Asriel. Asriel. With the context of chapters 3 and 4, my old video on Ralsei when I was only on chapter 2 has become a bit outdated in terms of my current opinion. Ralsei does exist separate from Asriel, and if he doesn't, he should, because his arc is about finding his own personhood in spite of his existence as a Darkner. The meta-narrative of Deltarune goes really deep. Reminds me of Umineko. Chapter 1 of Deltarune truncates and/or summarizes Undertale's main themes, if you think about it. This is most representative in Ralsei. Ralsei starts out repping the main themes of Undertale, mercy over fight, very strongly, but his general attitude is how King was able to sneak attack the Fun Gang, after all. This isn't to say that Undertale is a naive game, though. Ralsei just didn't have the whole picture. Susie's "it's complicated" pep talk aside, even in Undertale, the mercy option was more than just being nice to the enemy until they stop trying to kill you. There is a fair amount of trickery involved. One of the many examples is when you can get Aaron to inadvertently flex himself out of the room. Since Ralsei's name is an anagram of Asriel, a part of me hopes that Ralsei has a last name and it's Murderer. That would be a funny bit. You know, cause like, Dreamer is an anagram of murderer. I noticed that earlier fan stuff of Ralsei that were from before chapters 3 and 4 came out characterize him as someone who wanted to follow the prophecy. Obviously, with the information that was available at the time, I can see why people would think this. Ralsei is a very people-pleasing character, which gives him strict rule-follower vibes. But with the context of chapter 4, we know that Ralsei's characterization is actually the opposite. His enthusiastic kindness wasn't for following the prophecy. It was a desperate, last-ditch rebellion in hopes that his kindness could possibly change the prophecy. I just find that really fascinating. Ralsei is his own person, but his nature as a Darkner does kind of foil Flowey's nature in a way, in terms of limitations, you know? Not real versus soulless. Is Ralsei a shapeshifter of some kind? Does his struggle with identity extend to his physical appearance too? Is this something that he does consciously? I'm throwing out ideas here. And how come you can levitate? Where did that come from? And why do your horns face different directions depending on your design? Even with his chapter 2 onward design, his horns face different directions depending on if it's his portrait sprite or his overworld sprite. Is this a minor error that they just didn't fix? A perspective thing? More proof that Ralsei's a shapeshifter? The kindness soul trait maps onto Ralsei pretty well. They're both green, obviously, but a part of me likens the green soul trait to Ralsei's character arc, too. The green soul trait is where the player cannot flee and must face dangers head-on to survive. Ralsei feels trapped by the prophecy, but he must face it head-on. He failed to hide the final prophecy from Susie, and Susie vows to never let said prophecy happen. He should face the prophecy head-on, be more headstrong, like Susie, I think. Probably. Oh, right, cooking. Ralsei likes cooking for others. He mentions wanting to bake plenty of yummy cakes for Susie. Cooking is also a characteristic of the green soul trait, if you remember Photoshop Flowey's battle. Being presumably lifeless, the dummy has no personality. It does, however, attack Chris during battle, which implies that it has some magic properties. So yeah, the Ralsei dummy is probably enchanted by Ralsei. All of my Deltarune reviews are from the perspective of someone who's never played the weird route. I mean, I know a lot about the weird route. Fan art and text posts are really fascinating, but I haven't myself played it. I also haven't done the, like, fight 0 recruits route. I'm pretty sure it's just an emptier, less interesting version of the weird route. I don't know. Lancer's like if a child had the ability to make themselves as cool as they imagine. The issue being that children are still limited by the small amount of life experience they have. So, like, this leads to stuff like, I'm not old enough to ride a motorcycle, so I'll set my bike on fire. Deltarune has tutorial fights in the beginning of each chapter's Dark World. In Chapter 1, Ralsei teaches the player the mechanics of the game with the Ralsei dummy. Chapter 2 showcases how useful Ralsei is with the Werewires. The Werewires have the tired status effect by default, but because Ralsei isn't present in the first battle, Chris and Susie have to take a more long-winded approach. Chapter 2's first battle also puts the recruiting mechanic in action. In Chapter 3, Tenna introduces the battle scene mechanics with the Shadow Guys. Since the majority of Chapter 3 functions on points, Tenna announces that taking no damage and finishing battles fast, with a lot of TP, will get the party a bunch of extra points. And then in Chapter 4, the game itself just re-explains the mercy and pacify mechanics when the party party encounters the Gwei. Having a tutorial fight every chapter is just a good quality of life thing, considering the release dates between chapters. This explanation doesn't really explain the chapter 4 tutorial though, considering that chapters 3 and 4 were released at the same time. Other than a consistency thing, I think that Toby Fox is just designing the game for a general audience that would probably take breaks between chapters instead of hyperfixating like we in the fandom do. When I was making my video, Lancer is a strong intro to Darkners, I came upon this character. Anyone know who this is? Seems like a mystery character on the level of Gaster or the Forgotten Man. I just learned the nuances of what audio monitoring is on OBS when I realized that utilizing the monitor only parentheses mute output on my mic means that I can be heard on stream at the cost of fusing the two audio tracks together. So now the audio for the majority of my pre-recorded Silksong gameplay is fucked up. Maybe I'm out of touch, but does Lancer talk like a child, or what Toby Fox thinks children should sound like, or what Toby Fox sounded like when he was a child? Because seriously, what the fuck is "you delicious little apple"? Where did that come from? Comment from @BoomerKabam57 says, I wish I remembered where it was said, but I think Toby mentioned that Lancer just straight up doesn't know how insults work. Most of them are either accidental compliments or just wrong, like, last one is a fresh and fragrant egg, or him warning you to watch your fronts. A part of me wonders if it's because of his dad. His dad is such a bad guy that he thinks bad things are good, less so in morality and more in silly things that make him think getting a second doctorate is a bad thing. In Undertale and Deltarune, monsters, in terms of design, are mostly based off animals. Alphys and Susie are lizard/dinosaur-ish, the Dreamer family are goats, the Holiday family are deer, Undyne is a fish person, etc. But in general, the most common way this design philosophy is broken is when the games introduce characters that are traditionally monster-like Napstablook is a ghost, Sans and Papyrus are skeletons, Grillby is a fire elemental. Basically, most anything that would be seen in a D&D manual or a Halloween store would be considered a monster in Undertale or Deltarune. Still no clue how Tsundere Plane came to be though. How do you come up with that? Night Knight is a pretty out there concept too. Like, how does one come up with the weapon name Good Morning Star? The Dark Sanctuary's prophecy panes in chapter 4 are a stark example of how dark worlds have dreamlike, shape-shifty properties. Their perspective doesn't change, no matter the angle. They look unchanging, immutable. Fitting, I suppose. A glass tapestry rings above you. Strangely, no matter how you turn to look, its perspective never changes. If you think about it, Flowey of Undertale follows the design philosophy of Darkners being based off objects. If you count a flower as an object, though I suppose that's a matter of semantics. But Flowey's not based off a flower, he is a flower, so, although the cup tins in chapter 4 are literally just upside down cups with tiny legs, a googly eye, and a feather atop their head, so basically I really hope Flowey in chapter 5 is definitely taking place in the Flower King shop, looks the exact same as he did in Undertale. And I hope that the player and Chris have exact opposite reactions to Flowey. Like, imagine if there are dialogue options to be untrusting or threatened by Flowey, and Chris gets really confused why you choose them. That'd be funny. Like, I don't trust this flower. And then when Chris says it out loud, they're like, I don't trust this flower? What? A group of Rudens is called a necklace. Feels random at first, but considering they're based off the diamond suit of cards, grouping a bunch of diamonds together to make a necklace, it's actually a pretty clever play on words, in my opinion. Ruden has relatable retail worker energy when it's shown that he enjoys being in a trash can way more than he enjoys his job. Just want to check something here. If you think about it, Hathy's voice being through narration instead of dialogue kind of mirrors those Nara Kara / Chris narrator theories. Hathy is a surprising foil for Chris in that way, I guess. Looks like Hathy sold all the gems and replaced them with beds. Despite everything, it's still you. You didn't do anything else. Been thinking about Ralsei again and realized how these lines from chapter 1 get more and more relevant with every chapter. Chapter 1 gets better the more context the player has. Seeing the game with new eyes every time, I suppose.
That's your soul, the culmination of your being. With it, it holds your will, your compassion, and the fate of the whole world.
I've never seen these hurt sprites because I went full pacifist from the beginning, but these Hathy hurt sprites really sell the impact of attacks. Hathy's teeth are clenched hard as if being blown back by a tornado, and Head Hathy has what looks to be a surprised smile on her face, as if more shocked by the impact than hurt by it. Thinking about Ralsei again, and I like this part in chapter 1 where he gets politely frustrated at Susie's behavior. Without the context of chapters 3 and 4, I could see how people could interpret this as proof of Ralsei being a supporter of the prophecy. But now, with those chapters, I like to see this as Ralsei being a bit disappointed that Susie's not the hero he hoped she would be. A girl who could, perhaps, in Ralsei's desperate hope, be strong enough, kind enough, just enough to maybe change the prophecy. It's great how, by chapter 4, Susie does get into that role though. Maybe not in the way he expected, but definitely in the way he hoped.
You're a hero. Could you please start acting like one?
Everything's gonna be all right.
Susie's hope. Her naive hope. It makes me want to believe that the prophecy can change.
Acting to befriend one Jigsari immediately makes all Jigsaris in the battle sparable. These guys are not remotely soldiers, they're desperate asylum seekers. Also, the juxtaposition of the battle sprite and the spare sprite is kinda insane. It's like sheer teeth-clenching despair that immediately switches to a blushy, rosy-cheeked baby smile. It's like the sheer relief made their faces younger. You barely lifted a finger, and all right, you win, let's be friends. Top Chef has a notable speech quirk where he says "Mamma mia," which is an incorrect phrasing of "Mamma mia." If we take from the knowledge that dark worlds reflect the person who made them, I can see this as someone's incorrect approximation of what the Italian language is like. Shout out to this guy's Top Chef Papyrus Roaring Night theory. I don't endorse Papyrus Night even as a meme, but I'm glad y'all are having fun. Comment by @Mickey DeSanders says, "Papyrus doesn't know how to properly make spaghetti. He doesn't understand Italian culture. He made the Chapter 1 Dark World, oh my god!" If you don't know already, Lantern, Sham's shop theme, is a melancholy, slowed down arrangement of Rude Buster. Jigsari's Hurt Sprite has burger pants energy. Toby Fox's expression work is just top notch. I feel like I stubbed my toe just looking at this. Barry! They got Barry! Barry! Hang in there, Barry! Quick grammar lesson because I find it interesting. The word doom is defined as inevitable destruction or ruin. It doesn't just mean something bad. The idea of inevitability is just as important to the word's meaning as the destruction part of it. So yeah, you could say that the words doom and prophecy are intrinsically linked in that way. After all, it's not as if whatever happens will matter in the end. The air quotes around whole and full heavily imply that the money hole is just like a black rug on the grass. These guys are too destitute to dig, I guess. Which is fair. Digging must be hard with those stubby hands and lack of money to get a shovel. You put $1 in the hole. The hole became full. The hole is filled to the brim with cash. Of the main cast of Undertale, only Sans and Papyrus aren't based off animals in terms of design. But that's just one of many examples of how they're strange outliers in the story. Credit to this comment by @Scumpa, which points out that Hathi, in terms of design, is most likely two hearts layered atop one another. The head is the typical Valentine's Day heart, while the body mimics the shape of the anatomical heart, which makes the tendrils blood vessels. It's a really good catch. Also, this design interpretation contributes to Head Hathi's design, because it would mean that she's cold-hearted in both disposition and body. Dope! This reminds me of a military parade I heard about a while back. Jigsari is pretending to march. I see Sham's mindset as an extreme form of cope. Its indifference is a form of emotional self-protection, an unhealthy but logically sound win-win scenario thought process. Preemptively giving up through one's words, nothing matters. While objectively less healthy, can certainly feel more comfortable than trying your best and failing. Being right that things will go wrong can feel arrogantly satisfying compared to the risk of being wrong that things will go right, as if discomfort is an inherently bad thing to be avoided. Sham's mindset is the most extreme outcome of keep your expectations low to never be disappointed. After all, it's not as if whatever happens will matter in the end. Jigsaw Joe's life savings is like $1, and like, come on, man, you live in a castle town. I'm sure the welfare is better than that. And if it isn't, I need to have a talk with Ralsei. Challenge: Jigsaw Joe. Prize: Joe's life savings. You received Joe's life savings. $1. I think the fact that Sham doesn't have a proper eye speaks to their character. One of their eyes is like a button eye patch, and the other eye is so lidded that it casts a shadow, making it so that you can't see their sclera or iris or pupil. It all gives the impression of them having seen too much, like their vision was scarred by prophecy, like they made themselves blind to the idea of hope. Oh, also, it's interesting how Sham's button eye moves in conjunction with his other eye. Is it enchanted? Also, I've seen fan art that implies/theorize that that Jevil was the one who took Sham's eye. If that's explicit dialogue somewhere, I don't recall it. It's a cool character moment if true, though. Even when Jigsaw Joe escapes the tyranny of King, he still has to face the tyranny of the narrator. Wait, actually, if Chris is the narrator, then that makes this even funnier. Jigsaw Joe beat him up to earn his life savings. Boss, don't listen to that. That's the wrong act. The wrong act. Ralsei is young, while Sham is old, and their differing perspectives on the future/prophecy foil each other. And honestly, to me, this kind of feels like a commentary on young people and old people's differing perspectives on the future and the real world. A young man who's fearful of his future, but motivated to perhaps change the upcoming doom. And the old person who doesn't give a shit because they think themselves as 1 foot in the grave already. I want to believe the prophecy can change. After all, it's not as if whatever happens will matter in the end. The Jigsaw have floppy ears because they're partially based off mice. Jigsaw, attack 5, defense 0. This mousinary is only fighting to make ends meet. Great pun, Toby. Jigsaw smell like cardboard. This makes sense, as they're puzzle pieces. So I assume that when they cry really hard, parts of their skin start to look and smell like wet paper bag. Rules Card is the final boss of the weird route. I see past your foolish facade. And why does Rules' hip shop mimic Undertale's monochrome battle UI? Even in the same chapter, Sham's shop isn't monochrome, it's fully colored. And sure, you could argue that, well, almost all of Card Castle is monochrome, which, yeah, true, but Rules himself isn't, so why isn't Rules blue in the shop menu? I know what you are! Sans' boss fight is hard because he doesn't fight fair. He subverts everything established about Undertale's combat mechanics to get the player to quit. He attacks first. He uses his strongest attack first. He exploits his technically low attack power by removing invincibility frames, doing 1 damage per frame in a game at 30 frames per second, so 30 damage per second. He tries using the spare kill mechanic on you. He attacks you through the menu. His last attack is just an attempt to have his turn forever. Unlike in every other boss fight, his dialogue can only be advanced through attacking, not dodging or sparing or acting. At one point, after multiple attempts, he skips his own dialogue to catch you off guard with his first attack. Stuff like that. He isn't trying to beat Frisk or Kara or whatever. He's trying to annoy/frustrate you, the player, the amoral time deity, to go, ugh, this isn't worth it. Put down the game and leave what remains of Sans' world to move on to some other, quote, realm. Or at least do a true reset. And thematically, this is very poignant storytelling. If the player refuses to engage with the expected/desired by the monsters narrative of Undertale, at the very end, the game will get so sick of you that it will violently reject the combat dynamic you've expected/set up for most of the route. If you reject the game rejects you. By the way, this does not mean you're a bad person in real life for doing No Mercy. Undertale is just a game that makes the player a more active presence in the narrative. I would get into the nature of eldritch morality between player and game, but that's a different video to make. In any case, please God, do not revive 2016 era discourse, I'm begging you. Comment by @Kriotan. A big part of Undertale/Deltarune is that the game itself isn't judging you. The characters in the game are. The game is a philosophical dialogue, asking you to think about your behavior as a player and how you interact with the world and characters. It's a conversation about playing games and our relationship to them. As players, we love knowing every part of a game inside and out, but it would be a horrifying experience if the characters we loved knew what we could do/were doing. Whatever will Frisk had in the No Mercy route, the player removed it and turned them into an extension of the player. Remember, Frisk telling Asriel their name was something outside of player input. The idea that they were more than an extension of the player was a plot twist, a rewarding lore reveal at the end of the true pacifist route. The fact that we don't get any of that in the No Mercy route, and in fact start manifesting Kara instead, a name the player inputted, probably means that the player crushed Frisk's will and made them into a mere vessel. Probably. Could be wrong, but like... Anyway, it's cool how Deltarune's narrative can provide more context to Undertale with every new chapter that comes out. Okay, but like, if Rules Card is actually super duper strong in the final boss of the weird route, maybe what would you think it would talk like? This is a poll with 2.5 thousand votes. He'd talk the same, 41% of the vote. Formal but otherwise normal speech, 8% of the vote. Casual speech, 42% of the vote. Actually grammatically correct early modern English, 50% of the vote. No, but like, what do you think a serious rules card boss fight would look like? I like to imagine that rules would change the very genre of the game you're playing. Like, one turn it's Punch Out, the other turn it's the puzzle game, the other turn it's like the maze thing and Jackenstein's fight. Basically, I want to imagine rules seriously fighting you, and then the UI changes to Undertale, and then Megalovania starts playing, and they're like, wow. Similar vibes. During the Doom board section of Chapter 3, Tenna asks if anyone's seen his debit card sometime after restricting the heroes to do nothing but act. When it comes time for the rules fight, he mentions that he gave one of his cards, without his knowledge, to Tenna in exchange for his debit card. So yes, affecting the menu is specifically Rules' power, and Tenna was just able to make use of it because of Rules' shenanigans. Wanted to clarify this moment because it's kind of a blink and you miss it thing in my video. You seeth, I hath secretly traded cards with TV Guy. One rules card for his debit card. Now where the fuck is my debit card? The sound effect that plays when a dark fountain is opened is just a slowed down version of Rules teleporting. What did Toby mean by this? Chess theory as a concept is dead in the water when these guys are actual characters, right? Actually, what even was chess theory? I don't really get it because I joined the fandom when chapters 3 and 4 came out. At the Anything Channel's comment says, it was essentially a way to predict the main boss of every chapter based on the ranking of chess pieces. We start with king and queen, which are also the highest ranked chess pieces. Right after was supposed to be rook, and after them the bishop, which fit the church theme people were speculating would be the focus of chapter 4. Then again, the knight was supposed to be the main boss of chapter 5 according to the theory, so themes be damned. Either way, chess theory is pretty much dead in the water because of the knight appearing early, Tenna being anything but rook, and no bishop in chapter 4. The only way you could keep it alive is if you make the associations figurative, but even that goes into stretch territory. This is so real, not gonna lie. Maybe if I build a gosh old isolation in chamber, Mr. Society and come back. Yeah. K-Round is an iconic fight, in part because of its iconic OST. I remember hearing Checker Dance being used for meme/gameplay compilations and stuff when Chapter 1 was new. It was like Deltarune's Honeycomb Highway. K-Round uses star attacks. It shoots stars from its toes. I'm pretty sure that means K-Round is a dark star enemy, right? Or at least the crown allows the round to become a dark star enemy. Anyways, you know who else is a dark star enemy? This is an unused Chapter 3 sprite of C-Round as a wheel. What would it be used for? I don't know, I found it on the wiki. At Morgana the Cat says, I believe it was a scrapped thing for a Wheel of Fortune-esque wheel for Chapter 3. I'm assuming the plan was to lean more into the game show-like themes in an early concept of Chapter 3 or something, and I'm pretty sure code for the wheel is still present in the code. Imagine if this came back as a legitimate plot point. Yes! With my control crown, I mayst control any disc-shaped life form. Similar vibes. The inner machinations of its mind are an enigma. I love how in sync the Deltarune fandom is at times. Like, it is a scientific rule that you can't start a meme intentionally, but in the Deltarune fandom, someone just went, yeah, this would make a funny meme, and everyone was like, yeah, you right, and got to cooking. That's awesome. Screenshot of @DoEnjoyer saying, this has potential to be a really funny meme. Susie's idea. The soul is no character, it's literally just you. I see this take sometimes, and like, firstly, this feels like projection, like from people who deep down believe that they have no character, which is sad. Secondly, the soul has so much character that the fandom has made potential man slander memes of it. Thirdly, to elaborate on this point, here's a question. In Deltarune, how do you interact with the world? In what ways are you, the player, limited? What do the characters within the game know and don't know about you? Those limitations are characterization. Characterization is found through interactions. You, the player, are an active presence in the game's narrative, and as such, that makes you a character. The fact that it's a meta-narrative doesn't invalidate that whatsoever. Meet Manipulator man. Cannot operate normally without a host, then complains when the host doesn't want them hurting their friends. Sorry, Chris, but I paid $25. Blames Ralsei for dying, but forgets he dies only because they can't dodge. Help Susie get the code to the bunker? No. Get one shot by a hockey puck. 0 doors opened without outside help. 0 major feats outside of Chris's body. Being bright is not a feat. 7 times outsmarted by Chris. Okay, I didn't actually no-hit the night, but there's a guy who did, so it's our shared feat. I swear the player is powerful. Deltarune is the first fandom to make slander memes of themselves. One of the main parts of the Soul's characterization is that it can decide what Chris does, but not how they do it. Examples being showing compassion for Ralsei by flopping on the floor, being able to make Chris turn the doorknob in the church, but not being able to make them open the door itself. You, as the player, are also inherently more talkative than Chris, as Noelle points out. As Chris's childhood friend, she's very perceptive of shifts in their behavior. The Soul's truly special ability in the world of Deltarune seems to be exploiting the fabric of reality through the medium of game mechanics. In the Spamton Neo fight, perhaps the reason the Soul turns yellow is because Neo relates to Metaton, which creates a causal link to the mechanics of that fight in Undertale, which creates an opening that the Soul is able to exploit. I don't know, I'm just spitballing speculations here. The Soul's ability to exploit game mechanics is showcased much more explicitly in the weird/Snowgrave route dialogue box teleportation, being able to command Noelle despite Chris being KO'd because the player still has access to the battle menu, etc. If you compare the hues of Chris's shirt to Kara's, you'll notice that Chris's is more faded in color, indicating that they had their shirt for a while longer than Kara. Despite both of their issues, Chris had the chance to grow up while Kara didn't. I wanted to highlight a comment from Seth Mshambavanhu 8391. Something cool you didn't mention about Chris's Dark World form. The Dreamers' Dark World forms, at least Toriel and Asgore, are the king and queen. Presumably this would mean that Azrael would be a prince, but Chris is a knight. It shows how they see themselves as not part of the family, but eternally loyal to it. I really like this perspective. Fun fact, Deltarune Alphys' review of the Mew Mew Kissy Cutie seasons are entirely opposite to Undertale Alphys' opinions. Deltarune Alphys prefers Season 2 over Season 1. So unfortunately, this does mean that Alphys is the worst character in Deltarune. Comment by @ArielDraws4829 says, being fair, the name of the room where it says her review, it has a save point, is called Bad Opinion Zone. Also heard that since apparently the second season was darker, Undertale Alphys, who was pressured with stress and all the amalgamate stuff, just couldn't handle it and wanted more fluff. Well, Deltarune Alphys didn't have that. The universal avatar for a Deltarune theorist going insane. What role do you play in Chris's repressed memories, Temmie? Reveal it to me! Do you see the vision? You have to. I'm not insane. You're insane if you don't see it how I have this whole time. In Chapter 1, there's still some goofiness in Susie's portrait sprites, but it's much more hidden compared to when she opens herself up more in future chapters. Susie revealing her eyes is such a notable part of Chapter 1's climax. She really opens up by the end of that adventure. That focus on eyes, it really emphasizes just how little Chris has opened up in comparison. I mean, thinking about it, it does make sense. Susie's problems are heavy but contemporary, wanting to fit in but being inherently perceived as the scary girl, while Chris is being possessed by an extra-dimensional being and is also burdened by a dark promise from a zombie knight, maybe. In Undertale, Gerson is the shopkeeper who sells the Perseverance humans' equipment, the cloudy glasses and torn notebook. Gerson is a teacher and Susie's mentor in Deltarune, and Undyne's mentor in Undertale. In Deltarune, Gerson assigns the trait of perseverance to Susie. Perseverance is associated with learning materials like notebooks and writing in general. Writing. Gerson Deltarune is an author, writing one story in spite of the story that's already been written. Writing. Stories. Prophecy. Perseverance. The Perseverance human is the Roaring Knight. Maybe the wobbly things are characteristics of Dark Fountain's Chris specifically makes, because the Cliffs areas only show up in Chapter 1 and 3, and Chris is the one who made the TV world Dark Fountain. So maybe they made the Castle Town Dark Fountain? It's most likely not that. The simpler answer is the one implied in Chapter 3, that Cliffs areas are characteristic of all Dark Worlds if you go far enough, but I don't know, just throwing out some thoughts. Humans are children in terms of design because we've never actually seen an adult human in Undertale or Deltarune. You can kind of see adult humans in Undertale's opening sequence, but only in silhouette. There are no adult human characters with both a name and full design that have been seen in Undertale or Deltarune. Also, it would be really funny if it was confirmed that all humans in the Undertale Deltarune verse are non-binary. I haven't seen a cisgender human in Undertale or Deltarune, so how can I be sure they exist? What a happy family reunion, because as you know, these two characters are related. Modern Kirby has always had song names that go hard as fuck. Like, sure, Forgotten Land, as the first mainline 3D Kirby, popularized the song Two Planets Approach the Roche Limit, but Star Allies had song titles like Prayer Song to God, and Planet Robobot had Vagrant Counting Song of Retrospection. The Eldritch theming is basically integral to this series' modern identity. This is Rabbick's concept art. Pretty creepy. This is Little Ball's concept art. Very few changes were made, but just those small changes were enough to convey a more anxious personality. Pretty cool. This is Royal Coat Rack's concept design. They were originally going to be called Jack, as a more explicit reference to that one old-timey children's game, Jax. Looks kind of menacing. Sometimes I look at my own channel and think, man, this guy should upload more, before realizing that the person watching About Oliver play Minecraft for the first time instead of Edit is me.